Good day to everyone. It gives me great pleasure to act as moderator for this session. I'm pleased to introduce our hardworking current Director of Publications and Evaluation and Practice, Ivan. He's a private consultant and an academic who has monitored and or evaluated projects globally in several sectors, including health, education, including TVET, natural resource management, gender, tourism, disaster response, and social services. Over a period of 3 years, Ivan has been involved in 19 technical assessments in Jamaica and 3 in Guyana, for which he coordinated a core team of exceptional professionals to evaluate and design follow-up training at several mines so as to enrich competence, improve productivity, and enhance livelihoods. We feel that this session will present interesting contrasts or comparison with social sector evaluators. I will now hand over to our presenter, Ivan, and he will do his presentation, and then we will take questions in the last 20 minutes of the session. Over to you, Ivan.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you for the introduction. As I note on this page in the bottom, I may be using certain terms interchangeably, like evaluation, assessment, and audit. So please don't be disturbed by that. And I'm also suggesting that because this might be a different type of evaluation, that as we go through it, perhaps viewers and listeners could imagine how particular parts may apply to your own projects. In what way is it different? In what way does it contrast or compare? So this is about extractive industries, and 2 countries in particular where we have done similar work includes Jamaica, where we had worked with 3 different companies, Alpart, Alca, and Bundalco, and traveled to all their sites throughout the beautiful land, and also had many meetings with Hart in Kingston. The other country wherein we have this particular experience in the Caribbean is Guyana, where we worked with the Omai gold mine. Why was there an assessment or an evaluation done to begin with? Well, as you may know, during shutdowns, trained and experienced workforce leave to pursue other opportunities, and sometimes they don't all return to the mine. So you have new people coming to work, and new or staff that are just freshly certified from a technical institution, for example, may have insufficient sector-specific experience or knowledge. And so they might need some assessment and upgrading. The expansion of a particular mine might require tweaking of knowledge and practical skills, so some degree of re-education and upskilling for everybody. And any mine with a multinational workforce may have issues with prejudice, cooperation, communication, diet, and other issues. Now, some of this may not apply so much to the Caribbean because there may not be a multinational workforce. Certainly we found in Jamaica and Guyana that most of the workforce was local, but management inevitably was not. And there could be communication issues there as well. And we have found in other similar contexts that when there are people from different countries working together, harmonization is very important. And this is something I worked with in Mongolia, but we didn't have this particular issue in Jamaica or Guyana. So overall, the single common need at most mines we find was the improvement and maintenance of workers' technical skills and knowledge. These are the workers who keep the mine running, the different trades or crafts as they're called, I believe, in Jamaica. So the ones that we did evaluate were these 6 broad areas. And again, all these trades and crafts support the mines. Without them, mines don't operate. And just some pictures of, well, maybe you recognize recognize some people. So how were such evaluations carried out? Well, we used a fairly comprehensive process that we've worked out over several years, and we feel quite confident with it. First, there's the pre-evaluation groundwork, and this involves what we call personal development, which is an individual's comprehension of math, simple math, and English. And they needed at least 75% to continue to the what we call the actual evaluation. If they had less than 75%, then they had to stay in what was called in Jamaica and Guyana the labor category. So they couldn't go any further. But if they did get 75, they went out to the core preparation, and that was preparation for maintenance staff in all these different skill areas, electricians and mechanics and so on, in common requirements in math, engineering, science, communication skills, blueprint reading, and they needed a minimum 70% to continue to a full audit or a full evaluation. So this is pre-evaluation. If anybody does not get in the end 70%, they won't continue to the full evaluation. The skills and knowledge audit then was probably the most important aspect. That was the evaluation of how the workforce was, their competence, their knowledge, skills, and so on. This is where we decided who actually needed the training, in which specific areas, how much training they required, and with what equipment was the appropriate equipment, the materials on hand to do the training. And this audit was done in 4 distinct areas that you see the red arrow at the bottom. So the following page, I will get back to this and describe in more detail. But basically, it included a written craft knowledge test. It included individual interviews. It included on-the-job observation and an audit of the facilities and equipment. Based on that, then, there was a post-evaluation skills and knowledge upgrading. And the upgrading was either in a single specialty skill, depending on the particular worker, or broader multi-skill. And the unique aspect here that had not, to our knowledge, had really not been done elsewhere systematically, was that the skill gap based on the evaluation was compared with international standard. And that now guided the content, the intensity, and the length of the training required. So for example, if, and I'll show you a graph later on, but if we felt that there was a gap that required 2 weeks to bring up to standard, then that is what we presented back to the company after the evaluation. And it was up to the company to decide whether to do it or not, and whether to do it all at once or whether to split it up because of the different needs of the workforce and so on. We can cover this in a little bit more detail later on. So we can consider the pre-evaluation groundwork to be an ex-ante assessment of required eligibility, selection process, physical preparation, and stakeholders' involvement by the company concerned. And then we could consider the evaluation itself. It had an ex-post evaluation of the results and planning a follow-up. Now, usually this is the end of project evaluations in other sectors, in what I might call generally the socio-cultural sectors. This is where it ends. The evaluation is done, report is given, and so on. Here we went a step further, and we had pre-planned with the company that if there is a need to upgrade because some people were deficient, then we could either do that immediately afterwards or work out an appropriate mutually agreeable time frame later on. So this went a little bit further post-evaluation, and we did an ex-post evaluation of impacts and long-term planning. So what's next? How could you continue this? We don't want to keep coming back. Literally, we wanted to work ourselves out of a job. What is a way that the company can improve its performance in order to and ensure that they don't have to keep bringing consultants back? So coming back again from the bottom, you see those 4 circles, the written test, the individual interviews, and so on under evaluation. So if you follow the red arrow, we're there now. Just a little bit more detail. Under written test, it was written multiple choice theory tests administered to randomly selected sample groups from each of the tradecraft areas. And this was to check grasp of theoretical knowledge needed to support practical competencies in the respective tradecraft area. I use the words both tradecraft. We call it trade in Canada and other countries, crafts in Jamaica and other countries. So I just used both terms there, but I don't mean to confuse you. We did individual interviews to debrief each staff to understand their work, their planning and procedural activities, perception of skills needed to perform competently, and their desire to engage or not in further training. We discussed their occupational goals, whether they wish to proceed to maybe supervisory levels or stay at their level and so on, solutions to any exam questions that they may be afraid of, or sometimes some people don't understand the way we may not have written the particular questions correctly, and they may have understood it differently and so on. So we were very willing to make sure that it was understood, mutually understood. And we practiced some problem solving and calculation skills related to their particular technical skill area. The practical skills observation is also in some ways unique because we visited all the work areas in the plant, in the field. Staff explained processes and their roles and responsibilities in the equipment operation and maintenance. We discussed proper, regular, and preventive maintenance of equipment, routines, and value in minimizing costs. Technicians shared their own perceptions of procedures and need to understand reasons for routine and documented maintenance. And then we did a facilities, tools, and equipment audit to know how actual facilities and field sites, as well as available materials and equipment, may attract performance of staff. We checked the manufacture, the age, quality repairs, and prior maintenance, because equipment must be maintained and updated. So this is a very comprehensive, not just a test of skills, but actually seeing people at work, which we felt, and I feel from other evaluations in other sectors, is rather unique, that you actually observe people at work and then discuss with each participant how things are going and what the issues are, the problems, and so on, and have time to discuss. Just some pictures again from one of the mines. And here's a sample of aggregated comparison between local technician groups and Canadian, what we considered international standards. So pre-test is the purple, and you see there was quite a gap between that and the yellow, the international standards. And post-training test, a considerable jump in comprehension. And we did this with each participant. So here I've grouped them in this particular slide for ease of seeing it, but we did this with each participant individually. So each participant, when we spoke with them after the tests, was able to understand and visually see where he or she stood with relation to international standards. And that gave the professionals in our group, our professional technical staff, visibly the ability to say, well, this requires, 1 week, this requires 1 month, whatever. It gave very, very good information on which to base the ensuing training. But this type of evaluation needs proactive marketing, because many companies have no monitoring or evaluation system, or only periodic internal systems, because they tend to hire on qualifications and then things roll along, and some companies are quite strict in doing some examinations, but others aren't, and they may have continuing errors and difficulties that they cannot pinpoint the reason for. And many companies are reluctant to have outsiders become familiar with their operations. So they don't want to call in an outsider consulting group. This is similar with doctors, engineers, accounting firms, governments, etc. They don't like outsiders so much coming in and seeing what may be wrong and giving them advice that they may or may not appreciate. I don't think anybody's ever seen an evaluators wanted advertisement for extractive companies, but it requires skillful, truthful, and patient and personal marketing to convince them on the benefit of having an assessment or evaluation. Now, I'm using just a simple example that, for example, the per tire cost on the big mining trucks, which I'm standing in front of here, and this is really difficult to take out of the trunk of my car. They can be from $20,000 to $40,000 per tire, and so you just multiply the number of tires on a truck and the number of trucks needed, and at this point they were changed 2 to 3 times a year, so you can calculate that. So this is just one example because it's easy to sort of understand that we were able to convince the president that appropriate preventive maintenance and driving can mitigate the frequently costly replacements, and fund a professional evaluation to benefit the company in the long run. And in fact, that's how we did start. I mean, we were able to do this type on other aspects of the company as well to show how we could bring value added. But really, the cost of our evaluation was much less than the continuing replacement of these tires, because we were able to then assess where the problem was, upgrade all the staff on proper maintenance, and to improve driving skills as well. So it made sense to everybody. So after all the training was finished as well, it became, the company adopted that equipment condition audits must be done to ensure that equipment is maintained and improved. And this is regular maintenance. Best practice audits must be done to ensure that continuous improvement is maintained. Safety audits must be done to ensure that equipment is maintained in a safe operating condition. We also became convinced that supervisors must become involved. And we did this actually, because we found that after training, some staff became more knowledgeable than their respective supervisors. We needed precision with flexibility. We needed a precise plan, but it had to be flexible in planning and scheduling to ease the strain during company operation, because there are emergencies that might come up. There are people on leave, coming and going. The schedule might be changed for various local reasons. So we had to have the patience in that. And the other issue that came up afterwards was compatibility. Do graduates of recognized technical institutes actually have the skills and knowledge to assume the positions for which they have been trained? Mines expect, and this is why in many countries other countries that we've worked, especially Mongolia, I found, because they need work-ready staff, that more foreign staff are invited, and who are already quite skilled. Whereas locally, the staff that are hired from technical institutes actually do not have the skills to start right away, and they need more training. And this is why we wanted to encourage the companies that we worked with there and the company through Heart, the country through Heart, to institute longer term organized training and evaluations. So one of the companies followed up with a cooperative initiation of a formal apprenticeship program, and this was the first, and this was done with the National Training Agency in Jamaica and Heart. And then technicians were internationally recognized, which before they were not. Local recognition before was not internationally recognized. And this training was voluntary for outside contractors. The stakeholder benefits of the apprenticeship program were that the mine's need for ongoing supply of skilled maintenance workers was filled. Apprentices' need for income, training, job security, opportunity, and a bright outlook for the future was there. Heart in Jamaica fulfilled its mission as a national training agency. The country benefited from a buildup of skilled worker bank, and local communities benefited from employment and development of resources. Maybe you know somebody. So the upper one is Alpart in Jamaica, and it's a training school that was established in that company. And then just one of the several meetings we had with Heart to discuss long-term employment training and apprenticeship development. So if we compare commercial industrial evaluations by an outside group, what is what we were, with what I term socio-cultural evaluations by an outside group, here are some things that I've identified, and you could probably come up with a lot more. So we needed to verify the technical certifications before we did anything with these people. In a socio-cultural evaluation, you rarely need prior verification of qualification of the people you'll be working with. We needed to check on-site emergency preparedness prior to start, because you could have massive dangerous emergencies. Working with a socio-cultural evaluation, you rarely need to know safety policies and plans. The third one, monitoring and evaluation of technical staff knowledge and skills. Does happen in maintenance, in quarry operations, restoration and rehabilitation, environmental impacts such as pollution and water issues, and community relations, but usually not done of the administration and operations. Whereas in sociocultural evaluations, there's a lot of evaluation of administration and operations, but one rarely monitors qualifications, backgrounds, or individual knowledge and skill sets of particular sectoral staff within the whole project. Often there are no final numbers for assessment because of the short notice changes due to operational requirements and or leaves. So final work plans remain iterative, they can change. In sociocultural evaluation, usually all staff to be met are confirmed, but other stakeholders such as community groups, of course, may remain fluid depending on what's happening in a particular community. We found that the common missing link is theory. Trades and craftspeople rarely knew how something worked or why they were doing certain things to repair equipment, an essential component of doing things right. They worked by rote, but not understanding completely. I'm asking participants here, do you see any possible parallels of this particular point to sociocultural project evaluations? Assessment results were shared and discussed within a day. In sociocultural assessments, reports often are delayed for weeks. Upgrading deficiencies followed immediately and or were scheduled for a specific later date. In sociocultural evaluations, improvements are suggested, recommendations made, but not really vetted, rarely involved the group that was monitored and evaluated. And lastly, strict standards govern each operational skill set at the mine, because they're primarily technical. And in sociocultural evaluations, of course, some are strict, others not, and some are just guidelines that do not have to be strictly adhered to. Following 3 years of work in this area, because of an ensuing fluidity in ownership, there were, of course, ownership changes that you're more aware of than I am. Mine changed hands from American to Russian to Swiss, whatever. Closures, reopenings, financial issues, and other internal considerations. So the particular group that I worked with shifted efforts elsewhere, and we did similar work in Chile and Mongolia that, if anybody's interested, I can talk about. And as far as the presentation goes, that is it. I thank you for attending, and I'll be happy to discuss anything to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan, for a very interesting presentation. The floor is now open for questions. You can either write into the chat, or you can just put on your microphone and speak directly to Ivan.
Hi, good afternoon, Ivan. Lenny is here.
Hi, Lenny.
And so what you've highlighted is it's just the purpose of the evaluations, right? And it's the challenge that we have with evaluations. Who are they for, and who do they empower? Because the way it was set up, it was empowering, it was teaching skills, but not really empowering the beneficiaries to make a contribution, because those beneficiaries would still have to contribute in the way the owners of the company wanted them to contribute, right? But I believe that evaluators can help organizations get the big picture of what they're doing, right? From your experience with the project that you've done in these companies, who had the big picture of what was going on? Who could have really understood what you were saying? And before you answer that, I just want to say, we're very proud in CEI that one of our founding members came out of those mines, and that whole mining sector, that was Wycliffe Abrams. Just want to say that. But going back to my question, who had that big picture to really support the work of evaluations?
I would say, to begin with, I and my crew had a big picture, because we were predominantly, not everybody, I said there were some contractors and some people from technical institutions, but from my unit, at that time, I was working at university, and our outlook was to, literally our informal motto was to work ourselves out of a job, because we did not want to keep going back, because we did see the benefit of providing such training that they can just continue on their own to evolve. And that is why we also, even after we finished the training, put a lot of effort, extra effort, into meeting with HART and other agencies in Jamaica, for example, to see if there could be the establishment of more formal apprenticeship training. So now, whether the companies, of course, I don't want to belittle their effort. There were at that time some people at the company who were very interested in this concept and totally supported it. But from time to time, and depending on how high you go in the company, there are, of course, people that are more interested in the bottom line. So I can't talk for them as to whether everybody in the company and at all times would understand the need for developing this long-term benefit to not only the company, but the local communities and the country itself. but certainly when we were working there, and that was probably part of the reason why we were successful in getting several contracts, is the management believed in what we did. After we did the first one, I mean, it was difficult. I gave that tire example, but once we got our foot in the door and we showed what we could do with the training and how it would benefit the company, they are interested in that, but also how it would benefit the workers, because they would be more highly regarded, they would become more highly skilled, they might be able to increase their income, they had more job security, they were able to transfer to other mines with that qualification, and I think everybody sort of bought into it at that time. But I will acknowledge that it's an iterative issue, because when management changes or there's some financial issues and so on, training suffers. We find this everywhere, and not only in technical, not only in the extractive industries. Usually soft skills, training, assessments, areas like that, monitoring, evaluation, get less funding when there are other financial concerns, at least in the view of the companies. Did I answer?
Thank you, Ivan. Yeah, you did. Excellent, because you brought up a lot of points that I would like to talk more about, but let me give somebody else a chance.
Yeah, okay.
Hi, Ivan, it's Alan here.
Hi, Alan.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. And
Can you speak up, Alan?
Oh, sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good. Thanks, Ivan, for your presentation. And I think it was very interesting to look at this industry as compared to others which we're familiar with, whether in the not-for-profit or government sectors. You mentioned, there are always people in commercial sector who are looking at the bottom line. Not that these kind of financial or economic imperatives are solely in the preserve of private enterprise.
Okay.
But could you speak just maybe a little more about how the evaluation of the training and the processes actually helped people to think more about financial bottom line and effectiveness and efficiency, or even just sort of reputational bottom line, so either financial or reputational, commercial?
Well, it was seen fairly soon that when the workers, when they knew where the weaknesses were in the staff, and when they got training and were able to work more effectively and efficiently, that there were fewer accidents, fewer breakdowns. The bottom line seemed to improve, partly because they didn't have to pay for so many repairs and replacements and new purchases. And staff were feeling more needed and more useful because they were better qualified, and many of them became qualified to an international level. But you're digging for something else?
Well, I mean, I think I was when I thought when I saw the abstract presentation, I thought, gosh, this is going to be so very different. But actually, a lot of the parallels are very similar to work that we might do for government or for for not-for-profits, and things like reputation and sort of improved workforce. And a better quality workforce, better qualified workforce, are things that I think translate across very well. And I think your presentation really looked at these matters from a different way and perhaps jolted us out of our familiarity and made us look at them from a different angle. So I think it was just splendid. So thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you for the comments.
Other questions? Lidis just has a observation in the chat, Ivan. I really like this example because too many persons still place M&E in health, education, and the delivery of social services.
Sorry, because I
She
like
was
the,
just making a comment. She said she really liked the example because too many persons still place M&E in health, education, and the delivery of social services. Just an observation. She liked your examples.
okay, thank you.
Yes,
I just had one.
go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead, Valerie.
yeah, go ahead.
Just one quick one. Ivan, thank you very much. I found it very interesting. And something that made me smile when you made the point, when you were comparing this type of evaluation to more social cultural evaluations, is that decisions are made right there and then. Versus reports in the sociocultural evaluation context can take weeks. So do you, from your experience in these commercial evaluations, do you think there is any drawback to having these results shared and discussed and within a day, or do you see this as really a positive? Just wondering if there were any drawbacks vis-a-vis the sociocultural type evaluations that would take a bit longer, a bit more back and forth, and so forth.
I mean, with the technical assessments, one reason why they're perhaps easier, still a hell of a lot of work, but easier to discuss in a day, is because we did tests, we did exams, literally. And they were graded by the subject experts. And we gave a certain amount of time. We built into the time we had to spend with the company on site. We built in a certain amount of time to do that. So probably one full day to, review the results. And then the following day we would discuss them. In a sociocultural evaluation, you don't have such a cut and dry aspect that you could say immediately. Sometimes you might, but I think you could see the difference here. We had something to discuss fairly quickly, so that helped. The other was that we did agree with in discussions with the companies at that time that if we have the result, whether we give it out in a day or in a week, we felt that probably what would happen is they say, yeah, well, we'll look into it. We'll certainly upgrade them and it'll never happen. So we did have an agreement that if we could do it within a certain amount of time, they would allow us the time that we felt was necessary to upgrade immediately. Now, this didn't work for every craft and it didn't work all the time. Sometimes they said, well, we just can't because of the production pressures or whatever, and you'll have to come back in 6 months. Or sometimes we come back home and then we continue to communicate and they say, oh, we're going to have to put that off again. And so sometimes it didn't happen, unfortunately. But it happened enough times that a lot of people benefited.
So Valerie here. So, I think the differences between the type of evaluation and certainly the audience at which, who participates in evaluation, it makes all the difference. Certainly in commercial and industrial evaluations in that context, these business people are used to pretty quick decisions, and then of course you had the advantage of having done test exams, so you had a lot of quantitative data that could help you to get to a conclusion pretty quickly.
That's right.
In a sociocultural environment, however, there are many causative factors that may not be immediately discernible, and while you're able to identify maybe the issues immediately, the things that contribute to those issues. I mean, here you came to a pretty quick conclusion. These people need training. So we need a proper training program. We need the proper training, facilities, so forth and so on. In the sociocultural environment, there are so many interlinked causative factors that maybe a little bit more time would be needed to flesh these out. However, I think that some happy medium could be reached, because sometimes, you know, while you may take long to come up with a report, the importance of keeping people engaged in that period, I think, is the biggest challenge.
Mhm.
Because if they are not engaged, by the time the report comes out, nobody cares about it anymore.
Yes.
And the other challenge we have, particularly in this region, is that a lot of these sociocultural evaluations are not initiated by the beneficiaries themselves, or it's externally requested. So once the boxes are ticked for that external donor or that external interest,
Yes.
the local people may lose interest. If, again, it comes back to the point Lenny's raised about who is it really for? Who is it supposed to empower? And many times we do find that the sociocultural evaluations, while it has the opportunity to empower the beneficiaries more and so forth, a lot of times it's not taken to that extent because they may not have been commissioned for that purpose.
Right, right, good points.
So, you know, it would have to have been integrated into like the whole program management, program execution, for it to really have that empowering value. And I think that's what is missing in a lot of cases. Yeah.
Can I just piggyback on that a little bit, Valerie? Certainly, yes. So I want to say two things. Hope I remember what I want to say. So first of all, yes, the in that sociocultural environment where we've been seeing evaluations, and they've been asking especially for qualitative stuff. And so the fault a lot of people now have with evaluation is that it provides too much of that qualitative stuff. And Ivan talks about the bottom line, but it's really about what does it really mean for all of us in terms of where we're going, you know? So really and truly, the whole training of evaluators around, and I'm just going to say something here that doesn't mean this, but I suppose there's a project and there's a quality of life issue. Then quality of life is as evidenced by number of people with electricity, number of people with toilets, number of people with telephones. So even now in these, we now as evaluators have to really come up with these indicators out of qualitative context, you know, so that it is something now that to me will help to raise the profile of what we do, because too many people still think that all we're doing is documenting stories.
Is research.
Yeah, well, when you say some people don't even think it's that elevated. All we do is sit in focus groups and talk to people and collect these anecdotes without really noting number of people who express angst about a particular issue, or number of people who emoted, you know, that kind of thing. Those are the kind of things we now have to look at to sort of I hate to say bring more oomph, give more oomph, but certainly to raise, I would just say raise the profile of what we're doing, what we have done. So I want to just jump to what to link now to what Susan said about Ivan. So therefore, in that environment where they're accustomed to working with numbers, they're accustomed in that quantitative realm, you know? So it's easy to speak to them, their language. But what I have found in two critical discussions, I know, with the two agencies, implementing agencies, is that the comment based with a team, two different teams in which we submitted proposals. The liaison said to us, the higher ups just don't know what you're going to measure, what you're going to count. So we had all these lovely things about what will happen when we have, you know, all these areas for the staff of the organization to indicate us where we should go, and like what are the numbers they're going to get, you know, which was so instructive for us, you know. Okay, I've spoken enough. I'm turning off.
Yeah, in short, Lenny, what you're saying is that we do in the sociocultural evaluations, we do also have to have a bottom line. You do have to point to a bottom line that can be objectively measured, you know.
Yeah, some numbers that they could
Yeah.
actually, yeah.
Ivan, I had an observation kind of question to see
Sure.
what your thoughts were on this issue. So I noticed with the tire example that you had started to do some cost analysis. And I really think that in many situations, we could include a lot more cost analysis into the actual evaluation, something that I'm very passionate about. For example, you spoke about, you know, the benefits of the training and the proper maintenance of the fleet and the plant, etc. Given that they're so, in this particular example, where profit is the bottom line, I think there was an excellent opportunity in future for projects like this to actually go into some more in-depth cost analysis to show management how, you know, by doing this training in a more regular manner and the maintenance, etc., the cost of what they are going to do versus the benefits that could be reaped, not only from not having to replace equipment, etc., if it is properly maintained, but the safety aspect, which could, you know, have huge cost implications.
Yes.
So I just wondered what your particular thoughts were on how cost analysis could be used more in these types of evaluations.
Well, I think the management we worked with understood that. That's why they accepted what we said. It had to be sort of long and convincing discussions, but they accepted it and then realized after the first couple of such evaluation and training session, follow-up training sessions that, yeah, it worked. But still, what can influence them is a drop in ore prices, for example, or an increase in shipping costs, or political ramifications somewhere, or battles with the government over tax sharing, revenue sharing, whatever. So these will impact, and usually, as I mentioned, the first things that are cut when these issues come up are these soft areas like monitoring, evaluation, and training.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Ivan? I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so if anybody would like to raise any additional questions, we still have a few minutes. Or observations.
We did, if anybody's interested, I mean, this was in another country, in Mongolia, but I organized an evaluation of a technical institute, technical university, whose graduates were theoretically immediately work ready at a particular mine. And the mine complained that they were not ready. And so we did this evaluation of the university, and with a fine-tooth comb found all the reasons related to the teaching and the teaching materials, equipment, and so on, why they were in fact deficient. So if there are technical institutes that are producing these people in your countries right now, then there has to be a synchronized system to ensure that the graduates are literally work ready.
Did you have any indication? Sorry, after you left, you may have addressed this. I was a little bit distracted, but the extent to which they followed up, because if they saw it worked, well, I knew they were under pressure probably at the time due to costs and so forth. But for any of the other locations you did, you looked at, was there any indication that this is something they plan to institutionalize in any way?
Yes, and that is why Alpart, for example, started the training center, and Kirkvine Training Center, and Hart, got involved. So there was very enthusiastic involvement. But then, as you know, the mine was sold several times over,
Right.
closed down, and so things stopped. So the only thing we can hope for, which we have not followed up, we didn't have the resources to follow that up, is workers that became more highly trained and more highly certified were hopefully able to find similar work with other companies, even not necessarily extractive, because those type of technical skills are they're employable in other industries as well.
Right. Yes, because I know, well, in Guyana, for example, there's been a lot of transfer of workers from like the sugar industry, those certified, electricians and people like that moving into, they're expanding their water and sanitation system.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So certification is just a plus all the way around.
It is.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
That's not.
Okay. So Ivan, thank you very much for a really informative presentation. Valerie, this is because I've been attending more of the presentations where you're teaching a skill, but I think this is a really great opportunity that maybe evaluators we should have these presentations from time to time. And I'm not sure if you've had them and I've just missed them because I'm always busy, but I think they're a really great way to share knowledge.
Right.
Methodologies, etc., with other colleagues, and it's also a great avenue for mentoring, which is something that we don't always have the personal time to do with the younger evaluators.
Right.
But if they're able to attend some of these sessions, they can certainly, I think, have learn from this whole experience, and this would be a sort of a mentoring for them, where they're seeing how the more active, seasoned evaluators, how they go about their evaluations, and they learn at the same time as well. So I think we should have probably more of these presentations. And as I said, it may be just that I have been delinquent and not attending them. But if we have not been having as many, maybe it's something that we should think about in the future.
Yes, definitely. Even as part of the Eval for Action campaign, our whole intention is, this is kind of a follow-on in the series of virtual dialogues, right? So yes, it is it's something that we plan to have more frequently. Before we go, I know there are just a few here. A number have tendered their apologies because they had to leave, and I'm sure all of us do have something else to do. But Evaluation Week, this is just a shout out to Evaluation Week, May the 31st to June the 4th. Starting tomorrow, we will be putting out reminders and information on each of those sessions, which we're hoping several of them will be more in a kind of roundtable panel, open discussion with presenters, of course, but several of them will offer time for us to have some kind of dialogue and discussions like this. So we're looking forward to persons engaging.
Good.
So having said that, thanks to Nadini, we didn't get to, I should have introduced you properly at the beginning, our Director of Professional Development and Training. Thank you for doing an awesome job at moderating, and to Ivan for a very interesting session. And thanks to all our guests for taking the time out to attend. We look forward to having you for future sessions.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.